The story begins with a boy blushing as he stood, gripping his chest. Even when he thought about all the content of the game, he knew, even in real life, the girl in front of him was his favorite. She was Alexandra of Chevalier, the game heroine he loved the most. She stood there with a soft smile while looking at him with puppy eyes. The world they were in came from a game called Engage Hazard. It was a chat-based RPG filled with comedy, romance, and adventure. In the game, players could meet cute girls and unique heroines and try to make them fall in love. The goal was to become the next king by marrying the best fiancé in the world. However, the boy wasn't the main hero of the game. Instead, he had become Harold Well de Halvaz, the third prince of the de Halvaz kingdom, one of the most powerful countries in the western region. Harold was someone underhanded, despicable, and was easily controlled by people in power. The worst of the worst, nicknamed the incompetent villainous prince. The boy realized he had somehow become Harold when he woke up that morning. When he opened his eyes, memories of his previous life came back to him. It felt like something straight out of a reincarnation manga. In his past life, his name was Tachibana Haru. He was a quiet college student who didn't have many friends. Since he didn't fit in well with others, he often spent time playing games. That was how he found Engage Hazard, and even despite spending a lot of money on it, now, he was stuck living as Harold Well de Halvaz, the worst character in the game. In the original story, Harold became jealous of the original game's hero and started a rebellion. It failed though, and Harold was executed. The boy didn't want that to happen. He found out he was now only 13 years old, and the main story of the game wouldn't begin until he turned 16. That gave him 3 years. Since he already knew the game's whole story, he decided to change his fate. He promised himself he would survive and even save a girl who was supposed to die in the game. Afterward, Harold wore some clothes he thought looked silly. He asked the maids nearby what they thought, but they just smiled awkwardly and said it looked fine. He didn't believe them. He found his clothes lame. In his past life, he always wore black clothes, so he felt uneasy wearing flashy ones. So he ordered the maids to bring him a black outfit instead. When they did, he put it on and decided that this was what he would wear from now on. After that, he realized it was time to go to the meeting, so he rushed out. But before he could leave, a maid called him and handed him a handkerchief. He then recalled something related to it. In a short flashback, he found a girl crying inside a closet. He handed her a handkerchief and told her not to cry anymore. After seeing her smile, he thought he should have asked for her name. Someone then called out to him, and Harold rushed to the meeting. Soon after, he got to the meeting place. His father, the king, was glad to see him and said it was nice to have him there. But Harold only said sorry for being late. Then a girl stood up and greeted him. Harold started to remember something. In the game, Alexandra was the daughter of the Duke of Chevalier, the most powerful noble in the de Halvaz kingdom. He also remembered that she was one of the main girls in the game, but her skills were weak, even though she appeared early in the story. In the main story, people called her the Frozen Princess, because she was always cold and unkind to the other girls. Many players didn't like her, and she was always last in popularity polls. If the player didn't pick her romance path, she and her father would end up being punished for planning a rebellion. Even so, Harold liked her the most. If the player followed a certain route, there was one short line she said about the main character. She said she wished that person would notice her. It was a small moment, but it stayed in Harold's heart. Because of that, Harold decided not to be a villain in this world. Instead, he wanted to survive, for both of them. Alexandra looked confused because Harold was staring at her, so he quickly said sorry. His father laughed and said Harold must have been caught by her pretty face. Then, he invited both of them to a tea party. At the tea party, Harold saw that neither of them was talking. He realized he still needed to get closer to Alexandra, or things might not turn out well. He said her name, but she replied in a cold way. He admitted that he hadn't been a good prince and guessed that she didn't think well of him either. Then he told her that she could end their engagement if she wanted, since she probably didn't see him as someone worth marrying. Alexandra looked upset and asked what he meant. Harold raised his voice and said he just needed 3 years. In that time, he promised to become someone she could be proud of. His words surprised her. Then he got down on one knee and said that if after 3 years he still wasn't good enough, he would ask the king to cancel the engagement himself. He truly asked her to give him a chance. She stayed quiet for a moment. Then she said she understood, and that she would decide if his feelings were real. She called her maid Monica, who brought over a sword and a shield. Harold didn't understand what was going on. Alexandra told him she would attack with all her strength and all he had to do was block it. Harold thought it was too much. But when he said that, she gave him a serious look and told him that if he couldn't do it, then maybe he didn't mean what he said. In the end, Harold agreed and took the shield and sword. Alexandra blushed and thanked him. Harold tried to stay calm. He thought he only needed to block one hit and he believed he could do it. But when Alexandra moved, her attack came so fast that it surprised him. The hit was so strong that he coughed up blood and fell to the ground. She walked over and stood in front of him. He stayed on the ground feeling scared and confused. Then he noticed something strange. Her eyes were red. He remembered that this didn't happen in the original story he knew. Suddenly she told him that his determination had been noticed. This made Harold even more confused. Then she giggled and said she was excited to see how he would change over the next 3 years. Hearing that made Harold feel happy and he thanked her. She blushed, got into her carriage and waved goodbye. After the carriage left, Harold also blushed. He thought this was the first step toward a better future. He promised himself to do his best during the next 3 years. Meanwhile, in the carriage, Alexandra's face turned bright red. She couldn't believe what she had just done. She had admitted that she had fallen in love with him from the moment they first met, and that they were now engaged. She thought it was worth it to secretly ask for the engagement. Her maid said she understood how happy Alexandra was because everything with the prince was going well, but she also reminded her to behave more like a proper lady. Even though the engagement went smoothly, Alexandra said she deserved a little freedom, since her maid knew how she truly felt. Then the maid noticed how red Alexandra's face was, which surprised her. Alexandra looked at herself in the mirror. The maid told her that during the match earlier, her face had also turned red for a short time. She warned Alexandra that if Prince Harold ever found out why her eyes turned red, the engagement might be called off. This made Alexandra worried because she didn't want to lose him. The maid told her to be more careful and said she should have at least smiled at Prince Harold and tried to be friendly when she met him. Alexandra quickly said her maid should already know that was impossible. The maid already knew Alexandra wasn't good at talking to people, and that her social skills weren't what others expected from someone in her position. Alexandra understood this too. She knew she didn't seem friendly. She thought about all the things people said behind her back. Some said she acted like a villain from a story, while others just thought she was cold and unkind. The maid was still surprised when Harold blocked one of her lady's attacks. Alexandra said she had even used the dragon's favor for that strike. She explained that Harold was able to block it by matching the way her sword moved and changing where the hit landed. That helped spread out the force and made it easier to block. She smiled quietly, thinking that Harold didn't even realize what he had done. She also believed that no one else could be a better partner for her than Harold. He had once helped her escape from the palace by giving her a handkerchief, and that moment had meant a lot to her. At the same time, Harold was trying to decide what to do next. The world he was in had a battle mode, and if he fought right away, he knew he would lose. He felt stuck even though he had asked Alexandra for 3 years to get ready. The truth was, Harold's stats were a mess. His magic attack and magic defense were high, but the rest of his stats were low. His magic type was dark, but all of his skills used light magic, which didn't fit well. His physical strength was also weak. The only good thing was that he had the maximum number of skill points. Even though Harold had a lot of potential, the real challenge was figuring out how Tachibana Haru would train him. So Harold decided that the first thing he needed to do was find a weapon. Soon after, a maid entered the room and said she would be taking care of him from now on. She introduced herself as Marion CLR. She looked at Harold with an annoyed face. Harold was surprised. The maid standing in front of him was actually another heroine from the game. In the story, she was supposed to work for someone named Wilfred. She bowed and told Harold he could ask her for anything he needed. Feeling nervous, Harold thanked her. As she walked away, she quietly whispered that she was unlucky, then closed the door behind her. Harold started thinking about himself. Maybe he was just proud on the outside but quick to give in to stronger people. He was known as the incompetent prince. Being treated this way wasn't very easy, but it helped him stay out of the spotlight. He could avoid attention and live a quiet life with his fiancée, which was what he really wanted. He also thought that in 3 years this maid might end up working for Marion. He just hoped he wouldn't disappoint himself by then. There was also something the game never showed: Harold's past. As a child, he was always compared to his successful older brothers. Unlike them, he couldn't use the royal family's special crest, and he wasn't as skilled either. Still, he worked hard to try and catch up so he could earn his parents' approval. But his mother told him that if he couldn't even act as a stand-in for the first prince, then he should at least avoid holding him back. Those words stayed in Harold's heart and hurt him deeply. A week later, Harold woke up and asked his maid for a wash basin so he could clean his face. But Marion didn't respond. He realized it had already been a week since she started working at his place, yet she still didn't do her job properly. He felt like she was being disrespectful. After that, he went to the training area to practice. While training, he thought about how long he had been working hard, but he still wasn't getting better. He remembered that in the game, people could level up. But this world was different. To level up here, a person had to train their body a lot. Still, Harold wasn't making progress. He wondered if using a magic weapon would help. He knew that some rare weapons had special skills. In the game, weapons ranked R or higher had unique powers. Some of them even had magic. He thought that if he trained with one of those, he might learn how to use magic. But before that, he wanted to make his body stronger. That would be useful during emergencies. so he decided to keep swinging his sword more. Then Marion showed up and laughed a little. She teased him, saying he hadn't improved much. Harold just said he was copying someone with no real talent. After hearing that, Marion said she would help him train because she believed he had talent. Harold thought about how even a weak heroine like Alexandra had strong powers. Since Marion came from a family of knights, she was probably strong too. He figured that if he trained with someone like her, he might also become stronger. Then he asked if she was okay with teaching him, and she said it wasn't a problem. They both got ready and Harold attacked first. She told him his guard was weak and hit him, sending him flying backward. She looked at him with a serious face and said he really was the incompetent villainous prince. She added that everyone had already given up on him. She asked if it felt bad to be looked down on by a maid. Inside, Harold agreed that he was weak and had no special skills. But because of that, he didn't want to give up. He remembered how he quit too easily in his past life and didn't want to make the same mistake again. With new determination, he got up and tried to attack again. Suddenly, another maid stepped in and stopped her, holding a dagger to her neck. The new maid introduced herself as Monica Ashton. She said she was Harold's new personal maid starting that day. When Harold saw her, he was shocked because he knew Monica was supposed to be working for Alexandra. Marion was surprised and said she hadn't heard anything about this. Monica told her to check with the head maid. She also wished Marion good luck with her next job. Marion left, telling them to wait. Monica then said that when Harold married her lady, she would follow as her maid. That's why she sent her ahead to get used to Harold while there was still time. Then Monica held out her hand and said she would take care of him. Harold took her hand. A little later, Marion came back, angrily asking why this was happening to her. Monica calmly told her that she had reported Marion's rude behavior toward Harold. Because of that, Marion was no longer needed around Harold. Marion left angrily, saying she would never forget this. Harold felt confused. Monica then said they should go back to his room so she could treat his wounds. After she helped him, Harold felt happy because she was the first maid who treated him kindly. He didn't really want to call Monica, but he did anyway. However, she was too busy looking around the room for something. She explained that since Harold was at that age, she thought he might have some hidden items that teenagers usually keep. When she couldn't find anything, she assumed he had hidden them somewhere else. Harold told her clearly that there was no other place to hide anything. Then she offered to get those things for him if he didn't have them yet. This made Harold angry, and he told her not to do anything unnecessary. Still, he said he would count on her from now on. Monica seemed to understand and asked him to count on her too. The next day, Harold was eating when Monica came in. She told him that his brother Cardis wanted him to join dinner that night. Harold felt annoyed. Before he remembered his past life, he always tried to get his mother's approval, and that meant pretending to be close to Cardis. He thought Cardis might have known that Harold was just pretending to like him. But now, Harold figured it wouldn't be a big deal, so he told Monica to let them know he would come to dinner. Later, at the training grounds, Harold was practicing hard like he usually did. It had been a while, but he didn't feel like he was getting any stronger. On top of that, he had already made a promise to Alexandra. When he opened his eyes, he saw Alexandra already standing there watching him. She told him she was thankful for his effort. Harold was surprised, and he turned red as he asked why she had come. Alexandra reminded him that it had already been a month since they last saw each other. She said that because they were engaged, they needed to meet and talk more often. If they didn't, people might start talking behind their backs. So instead of waiting for him, she came to visit. Harold realized he hadn't thought about any of that. Alexandra firmly told him to be more thoughtful next time. Even though Harold had promised to become someone worthy of her, he couldn't believe he had forgotten the most important person, Alexandra herself. He knew he had to take the first step, even if it made him nervous. Then he suddenly remembered that the Chevalier territory was far from the capital. But Alexandra explained that since their engagement, she had moved into a townhouse closer to where he lived. This surprised Harold. She also said that if he wanted, she could come visit him anytime. Harold was caught off guard. He didn't expect her to do so much for him. He started to wonder if maybe she had feelings for him, even just a little. But then he told himself not to get the wrong idea. After all, this was only the second time they had met. Next, Alexandra pointed out that he was only practicing sword swings. Harold quickly said it was because of the weather. He couldn't bring himself to tell her the real reason, that he was training so hard to get her approval. He wished he could say that out loud, but he felt like no matter how hard he tried, no one ever noticed him, back then or now. Then Alexandra brought up something from a month ago which confused Harold. She said she knew he was working hard to keep the promise they made. After hearing that, Harold finally told the truth. He said he had no special talent, but he was trying his best because of the promise he made to her. He added that he still needed to work harder if he wanted to stay as her fiancé. This made Alexandra feel sad, so she asked if she could help Harold with his training. Harold was surprised but said that it was something he could only dream of. He explained that he was doing all this hard work for her in the first place. Alexandra then asked if he thought she wasn't good enough. Harold quickly said that wasn't true and held her shoulders. He told her that he was training for himself, so he couldn't let her teach him. He also said he would feel bad for taking up her time. Alexandra laughed and reminded him that she was his fiancée, so he didn't need to worry about that. Harold blushed and thanked her. She was blushing too. Then she stood up and said it was time to start training. Harold was shocked. She picked up a sword and told him that since he had blocked one of her attacks before, he should be strong enough to do it again. She told him to get ready while he stood there, still confused. She told him again to prepare himself. After some time, Alexandra said she would come back the next day because it was getting late. Harold stayed where he was, shaking and unsure of what had just happened. Alexandra said they only had 3 years left, so they couldn't afford to waste a single day. Harold wondered if she was really sure about that. He had 3 tough years ahead, but if he didn't become stronger in that time, his future as Harold would be just as hopeless as it was in the game. Alexandra told Monica to take care of Harold. Monica said she would clean his wounds and help him rest so he could feel better by the next day. She planned to do it in a close and personal way, but Alexandra told her not to go that far. Then Monica told Alexandra to leave quickly because Harold was invited to dinner, and if he didn't hurry, he would be late. When Alexandra heard this, she felt annoyed because no one told her about the dinner. Monica teased her and said that Alexandra wasn't invited anyway. Alexandra said she wanted to go since she was still there, but Monica said no right away. Before Alexandra left, she called out to Harold and told him to let her know what happened at the dinner when she got back. Harold agreed. After she left, Harold quickly got ready. When he finally arrived at the dinner, he said sorry for being late, but someone told him they had been waiting for him. That person was his brother, Cardis Well de Hauval, the first prince of the kingdom. Because of his skills, Cardis was already involved in national politics and was the top candidate to become the next king. However, he acted cold and showed no kindness or emotion. With the powerful crest of de Hauvals, he stood in the way of the protagonist. He only saw Harold as a useless little brother. Even so, Harold continued to follow him, hoping that one day Cardis would notice him. Harold believed that if that happened, their mother would finally look at him. But deep down, he knew it was only a dream. One day, Harold nervously asked why his brother suddenly wanted to have dinner with him after such a long time. Cardis said it was to celebrate Harold's engagement to the daughter of the Chevalier ducal family. Harold thought his brother just wanted to use this as a way to gain support from the Chevaliers. It was true that the Chevaliers were the most powerful noble family. With their help, Cardis could easily take the throne. But this time, Harold had no plans to please his brother. Then, Cardis's maid whispered something to him. He looked annoyed and told someone outside to come in. A handsome young man entered with a smile and congratulated Harold. It was Raphael Well de Hauvals, the second prince. Even though he looked friendly, he was clever and strategic. He didn't want to become king, but he disliked the first queen because she treated his mother, the second queen, badly. Because of this, he also opposed Cardis, who was the first queen's son. Since Harold was seen as useless, Raphael didn't seem to have anything against him. Cardis didn't believe Raphael came just to give congratulations. Raphael jokingly asked what secret plan he could possibly have. He pointed out that Harold was marrying the daughter of the powerful Chevalier family and said he wanted to find a partner too. But Cardis called him out, saying he had already heard from the king and queen that Raphael had once proposed marriage to the Chevalier family, but was rejected. Harold was surprised to hear this. Raphael admitted it was true and said that if he had known things would turn out like this, he would have tried harder. He then jokingly asked if Cardis also wanted to marry the same girl and offered to give her up if Cardis was serious. Cardis said he could do that. Hearing them talk about their fiancés like they were just tools made Harold upset. He stood up. The other two asked what was wrong. Harold said he didn't feel well and politely excused himself. He apologized for the trouble they went through to prepare the dinner. After leaving the dining room, Harold realized that even the things he once thought were just common sense had changed after he got his memories back. He knew this kind of thing was normal in this world. Still, he didn't want to be the kind of person who used women as tools just to succeed, even if that went against what people believed in this world. In the game, Harold had hurt Alexandra, his favorite heroine, just to be accepted by his mother and brother. He didn't want that to happen again. He decided to fight against his fate, not just to survive, but to make sure Alexandra would never have to look sad again. Before he could leave, someone called him Big Brother. It was the fourth prince, Wilfred Well de Hauvals. He was the main character of Engage Hazard. He had no special power, so people called him the one forsaken by God. Others called him the Tainted Prince because his mother was the king's mistress. In the past, Harold had used Wilfred's background as an excuse to treat him badly, but even so, Wilfred stayed kind and respectful. He had come over after hearing about Harold's engagement and congratulated him. Harold, unsure, asked if he was really okay with it. Wilfred smiled and gave him a proper congratulations. Harold found it hard to believe. He wondered if there was some kind of reconciliation route like in the game. Then he noticed someone standing behind Wilfred. It was Marion. She had become Wilfred's maid, just like in the game. Now, Harold understood why she had been so angry before. People treated Wilfred, the tainted prince, even worse than they treated Harold, the so-called incompetent villainous prince. But despite her situation, Marion looked happy. She was clearly behaving differently from how Harold acted in similar moments. He wondered if this was just how heroines naturally acted around the protagonist. Wilfred also thanked Harold for Marion. Since Harold had fired her, she had become Wilfred's personal maid. Wilfred said he was grateful. Marion also thanked Harold, saying she was happy to serve her true master. Harold could only accept it. It seemed like he had no chance of truly getting along with the protagonist. Soon after, Harold looked completely worn out. Alexandra had already heard what happened. She couldn't believe that someone like the tainted prince, along with a maid from a fallen noble family, had treated her Harold so badly. She even thought about using the power of the Chevalier family to deal with them. But Harold told her not to. Alexandra then said that Harold needed to become stronger to help prove their engagement was serious. But after all his training, Harold still looked weak. If this were just a game, he could have easily improved by spending money. Alexandra started to worry and thought there had to be a better way to help him grow stronger. She figured that finding the right weapon for him should be their first step. In the game, Harold's main weapon was a spear. But now, Harold wanted to use a shield instead. Alexandra was surprised. For the past month, Harold had been thinking deeply about his choice of weapon. A shield was usually used by characters with low defense who focused on magic. It actually fit someone like Harold really well. But the real reason Harold chose the shield was because he once managed to block one of Alexandra's attacks. That moment stuck with him, especially because she praised him for it. That praise meant a lot, and it helped him decide. Alexandra said the shield was a great choice. She believed that one day, Harold would be known as a strong and unshakable defender. She held his hands and promised to help him become stronger. After that touching moment, she told him it was time to begin his shield training. Harold nervously asked her to go easy on him. After some time, a tired Harold thanked Alexandra for the training. Alexandra saw that he had improved a lot over the past 3 months. She said that an ordinary person wouldn't have been able to land a single hit on him. Harold had gone through tough training every single day. Even so, he still wasn't able to block more than 20% of her attacks. Alexandra told him to be more confident. Even though it was only 20%, no one else could block her sword at all. In fact, in her whole family, only Monica was able to do that. Still, she was worried because Harold kept training and wasn't paying enough attention to his studies. Harold told her not to worry. He couldn't mention it, but as a former college student, he believed he could still learn well. Alexandra understood and told him that training was over for the day. She excused herself and walked away. Later that afternoon, while they were having tea, Harold asked his beloved to help him find a shield that was perfect for him. He said he wanted the jet black shield Kasparig. Alexandra and Monica were surprised. Alexandra explained that the shield could only be found by defeating the demonic beast Kasparig, a monster that lived on Morn Island. People said not even 1,000 soldiers could beat it. Monica then told Harold to think again. She said it wasn't just about getting the shield, he might lose his life trying. But Harold still insisted that the jet black shield Kasparig was the only one for him. He couldn't imagine using any other shield. It was the only high-level shield that worked for someone like him who had the dark attribute. The only way to get the shield was to defeat the mid-boss, Kasparig. The shield had a special skill called Snatch. This skill would let one attack from far away using dark magic claws. It also had a chance to cause instant death and could grab dropped items from a distance. Harold knew he couldn't do it alone. That's why he was asking them for something so difficult. He said it was okay if they said no. Alexandra said she was just worried about him. They stared at each other for a moment before she finally gave in. She understood what he wanted, but she told him not to try anything too dangerous and to listen to their orders during battles. Feeling excited, Harold said he understood. The three of them reached Morn Island. But before they could start exploring, a small black cat appeared and warned them not to enter its boss's territory. Harold thought the small cat might be the creature they were looking for. Alexandra said a Kasparig was supposed to be big like a lion. Monica agreed and said a cute kitten couldn't be it. The black cat warned them again, saying its boss was very strong and scary. Harold picked up the cat and asked if it was really a Kasparig. The cat said yes. Harold then asked why it didn't look like a huge lion-like beast. The Kasparig got angry and asked what they even knew about it. It said Kasparigs were strong and cool. Harold asked if it knew anything about the jet black shield Kasparig. The cat said it would help them, but only if they did something for it first. Harold asked what it wanted. The Kasparig said someone had entered its territory and needed to be stopped. Harold quickly said no. The Kasparig asked if he really wanted the shield. Harold replied that he wanted many things. He remembered that Casparigs were now known as legends and were once dangerous creatures. But since this one was asking for help from humans, it must have been dealing with something it couldn't handle alone. Still, Harold didn't want to risk the safety of the people he cared about. So he decided he couldn't just help a magic beast no matter what it needed. But the girls still wanted to help the Casparig. They wanted to find out which villain had caused the trouble and promised they could handle it. Harold reminded them to turn back if things got too dangerous. The Casparig didn't mind and let them go on. Soon, the group came across a strange and terrifying monster. It had the color of beauty and looked as white as snow, but the rest of it was awful to look at. Its eyes were sewn shut and it looked like a giant, disgusting pig. This creature was once a holy beast and a messenger of the gods. Now it had become a powerful monster known as the gluttonous beast Henwin, a raid boss. Monaco quickly said they should run away, but before anyone could move, the Casparig charged at the monster, shouting that it would get revenge for its mother. Even though it was blind, the Henwin managed to hit the Casparig and slam it to the ground. Harold didn't know what to do. If they left the Casparig behind, he wouldn't get his shield. Without it, his whole plan to survive would fall apart. But he still had one last idea, one that didn't need the shield. He could have given up earlier and just followed the story that was already planned for the character Harold, but now he didn't want that. He stepped forward and shouted at the monster, telling it to get its dirty foot off the Casparig. At that moment, the angry monster was attacked by Alexandra and Monica. It let out a loud cry of pain. Alexandra praised Harold for being brave, but also said he was still too reckless. She joked about what to do with someone like him, being so kind and awkward. Even so, she admitted she liked that part of him. Alexandra and Harold looked at each other and blushed, as if they were in their own little world. Monica couldn't believe she had to keep working under someone like Alexandra. Harold then told the Casparig that they would beat the pig monster together. The Casparig snapped out of it and joined Harold in the fight. The monster, Henwin, had strong attacks, but to Harold, who trained every day against Alexandra's fast moves, they felt slow. All he needed to do was block them well enough so the others could land their hits. The girls teased the monster for being slow, which somehow made it even angrier. It charged at them and they ended up falling to the ground. Luckily, Harold stepped in to block the attack, but it knocked him back hard. Monica said she would distract the monster. Alexandra ran to Harold, worried, and asked if he was okay. Harold said he was fine, but admitted this was his limit with the gear he had. Even though he could block the hits, he couldn't stay on his feet after taking them. He hoped he could at least use the jet black shield Casparig. Just then, the Casparig spoke to him in a sad voice and called him human. Harold told it that his name was Harold. He then asked where the jet black shield Casparig was. He said he could beat the pig monster if he had that shield. The Casparig looked unsure, but Harold pushed it to answer. Finally, the Casparig agreed, but it asked him not to betray it, no matter what kind of shield appeared. Suddenly, the Casparig was covered in fog and changed into a shield. Harold was surprised, but then he saw that the shield was about the size of a smartphone. The Casparig said this was the best it could do. It explained that, unlike its mother, it was still a child and didn't have much mana. Now Harold understood why the Casparig didn't want to show its shield form right away. But Harold was more confused about what mana meant. In the game he knew there were only HP, SP, attack, and defense stats, along with physical and magical power. There was no such thing as mana. The Casparig was shocked that he didn't know, since humans were supposed to use mana too. Harold told it that he didn't have mana or anything like that. At that moment, Alexandra got his attention. She started to explain that mana was something every living creature had. She said it was different for each person and was needed to use blessings or gifts. She was sure that Harold had heard of it before. Harold finally understood. In this world, SP was called mana, and skills were known as blessings. He gave a small smile and asked the Casparig if mana could be shared with others. The Casparig said it could receive mana from people. However, it explained that it needed the same power level as its mother to make the jet black shield Casparig. It required a huge amount of mana, and if it took that much from Harold, he could run out and collapse. Harold joked and asked if the Casparig was getting worried about him. Then he told it to take as much mana as it needed. The Casparig tried to warn him again, but Harold just told it to hurry up. So, the Casparig wrapped itself around Harold's left hand and said not to blame it if something bad happened. Meanwhile, Monica was in trouble. A pig monster had her cornered. Alexandra rushed in to help and started fighting back. She told herself that she had to stay strong. Right before the pig monster could charge at the girls, Harold stepped in and shouted that it shouldn't touch anyone he cared about. He blocked the attack and asked if the girls were okay. He said he would stop the monster's attacks and told them to use that chance to finish it. The girls replied that they would handle it. Harold was amazed as he watched the monster struggle in front of him. In the game, every weapon except for shields added its attack power to the player's stats. Shields worked differently. They added defense instead. If the person using the item had the same attribute, the effect became twice as strong. Because of this, the jet black shield Kaspareg that Harold held now had a defense as strong as a top-level SSS heroine. That's why Harold was able to block the monster Henwin's attack with ease. Alexandra and Monica saw a chance to fight back. They rushed in to attack the Henwin, but the pig-like monster suddenly stood up and let out a loud squeal. Harold quickly realized what it was about to do. He told the girls to get behind him. The Henwin sucked in a huge amount of air and unleashed a breath attack. Harold stood in front of the girls and blocked it. He stayed strong, saying he would protect them. The girls were surprised as Harold held his ground. When the attack ended, Harold pointed out that he had managed to take the full hit without falling back. Alexandra smiled and told him he did a good job. She said they would handle things from there. But deep inside, she was angry. Her eyes turned red as she shouted at the pig-like monster for hurting someone she cared about. Harold was shocked to see how her eyes had changed. Alexandra said she would teach the monster a lesson. In just a moment, she blasted a hole through the side of the monster's body. Even with such a serious injury, the monster was still alive. Then Harold spoke to the Kaspareg and said it was time to get revenge for its mother. The Kaspareg asked how. Harold told it that it should already know, now that it could feel the power inside itself. Right after Harold said that, the Kaspareg attacked using a skill called Snatch. It was a special power that only the jet black shield Kaspareg could use. It took everything from its enemy, even their life. The Henwin monster fell to the ground, dead. After the battle, Harold helped bury the Kaspareg's mother. The Kaspareg leaned against the tombstone and said it had finally done it. Harold and the girls were happy, but Harold reminded the Kaspareg about its promise. The Kaspareg pretended not to remember, but Harold pointed out how weak it was now, with only a little mana left. He asked what it would do if another dangerous creature showed up. Harold knew the Kaspareg was feeling nervous, so he made his next move. He let out a big sigh and said he had finally found the perfect partner. The Kaspareg looked surprised and asked if he meant it. It said it didn't have any mana, but Harold explained that he could help with that since he had a lot of mana to share. Harold also said he couldn't use any other weapon besides the Kaspareg. He believed their meeting was meant to happen so they could grow stronger together. The Kaspareg blushed and jokingly said Harold would be useless without it. Then it agreed to help and called Harold its partner. On their way home, Alexandra couldn't stop giggling. She asked Monica if she saw how amazing Harold looked. Monica said she did, but she also asked why Alexandra didn't just finish off the monster right away. Alexandra replied that Monica could have done it too. But Monica pointed out that there was no wild look in Alexandra's eyes this time, and it was all because Harold stopped her final attack. Alexandra felt excited watching the person she loved grow stronger, especially since he had beaten a monster more powerful than him. Monica agreed. She remembered that when a strong monster like the Henwin appeared, it usually meant the royal army had to step in. But somehow, Harold managed to defeat it on his own. Now Monica understood why her lady cared about him so much. Still, Alexandra felt annoyed that Harold was now working with the Kaspareg. Monica remembered how Alexandra used to seem fond of the Kaspareg at first. But now, Alexandra was upset that they called each other partners. Even though Harold already had her, she held a handkerchief tightly and thought about how it had been 7 years since Harold saved her. The kingdom of Dehovals had been founded by a dragon, and even after many years the dragon still cared for it. At that time, the Dehovals family ruled the kingdom, and the dragon family that supported them was the Chevalier family. Since the kingdom was very old, only a few people still remembered how it all began. Monica believed that the only dragon left in the Chevalier family was her lady, Alexandra. A long time ago, Harold had given Alexandra a handkerchief with a dragon on it, and she had accepted it. To Monica, it looked like Harold wanted the dragon's power, and because Alexandra accepted the gift, it seemed like they were meant to become a couple. But the problem was that only Alexandra believed that. Monica was sure that the prince didn't know what it meant and probably didn't even remember giving her the handkerchief. Still, Alexandra didn't mind. It had taken her 6 years to get to where she was, but now she could finally stay close and protect the prince. The Chevalier family believed that strength is justice. They had a special sword called the Divine Dragon Slaying Sword Balmung, which was given only to the one who stood at the top. Because of this, neither the current head of the family, her father, nor her older brother Cedric, who was next in line, had any say in who held the sword. Monica believed her lady worked hard to become strong enough to protect the prince and stand by his side. Monica also knew that was why she was placed next to the prince to guard him. Alexandra trusted her with that job, and Monica told her to leave it to her. Monica was ready to give her life if needed. She wanted to protect everything, not just her lady, but also the one who once called her precious, the prince. Later on, Kaspareg was seen enjoying some fresh fish. Harold reminded him not to eat too much. After the battle, the two decided to give each other nicknames since they were now partners. They started calling each other CAs and Hal, but there was one problem. Harold's future wife was angry. She couldn't believe that CAs had beaten her, the fiancé, to something. She sulked about it, so Harold began calling her Xandra instead. No matter how many times he recalled it, Harold found her jealousy a little cute. At that moment, Harold's meal was suddenly interrupted. Monica arrived and brought some news. Later at the training grounds, Alexandra found out that Harold had been invited to a party by the Marshall family. As usual, Harold was lying on the ground, completely exhausted. The Marshall family was a noble house started by the younger brother of the previous king, after he had given up his royal title. Alexandra said it would be rude to say no to an invitation from someone who used to be royalty. Frederica, the oldest daughter of the Marshall family, was one of the main female characters in the game. She was also engaged to Cardis. Harold didn't want to go because he knew Cardis would be there. Then, Alexandra shared that she had also received the same invitation. She thought the family wanted to meet them together since they might become in-laws in the future. Harold wondered if that was true. Still, he agreed that it made sense to get along with people who might become family someday. He also thought it was normal for others to be curious about them. He asked Alexandra what she planned to do. She said it would be best if they both went to the party. She also wanted to see what kind of person Frederica was. Harold was starting to understand things now. Harold thought Alexandra was subtly asking him to take her to the event, like a date. He noticed that she was waiting for his response. So he decided to take the chance and shyly asked if they could go together. But he spoke so softly it sounded like he was mumbling. He couldn't believe he had asked her in such a strange way. Still, just as he hoped, Alexandra said yes. Later, Harold rode a carriage to pick up Alexandra. When he saw her, he was so amazed by how she looked that he couldn't speak. Alexandra thanked him for coming to get her. Harold told her she looked very cute, which surprised her a bit. They both sat in silence, blushing inside the carriage. To break the silence, Harold nervously gave her a small gift box. He said it was something to remember the night. Alexandra asked if she could open it right away, and Harold said yes. Inside was a pretty hair ornament with a gem. Harold said he chose it because the colors reminded him of her eyes. Alexandra put it on her hair and asked if it looked good. Harold said it did. She thanked him and looked out the window with a smile. Harold wasn't sure if she really liked the gift, but he was happy that Monica had helped him buy it. He still couldn't believe that someone like Alexandra had accepted him, the one everyone called the incompetent villainous prince. He wondered if it was just because they were engaged, but even that didn't fully explain it. He felt like he had already received so much from her. Deep down, he wanted to ask why she accepted him, but he didn't have the courage to say it out loud. Alexandra told Harold that they had finally arrived. Harold offered his hand, and Alexandra thanked him. They walked into the mansion together. Just as they expected from the Marshall family, there were many guests at the party. Soon after, they noticed some guests looking confused. They were surprised to see Wilfred and Marion at the party too. Harold wondered why Wilfred was there. Alexandra asked if something was wrong. Harold told her not to talk to Wilfred and said that if he said anything, they should just ignore it. He also told her not to react. Alexandra replied that she understood. Suddenly, music started playing and someone announced the arrival of Cardis and Frederica. When the two entered, Frederica smiled and greeted the guests. Harold thought she looked very beautiful, just like one of the heroines in the game. Alexandra then asked if Harold liked girls with large chests like Frederica. Harold quickly said that wasn't true. Then Frederica walked up to them and thanked them for coming to the party. Harold said they should be the ones thanking her for the invitation. When he tried to introduce Alexandra, Frederica cut him off and greeted Alexandra in a cold tone. Alexandra thanked Frederica for inviting them. Frederica gave her a sharp look and said she heard that Alexandra got engaged. Alexandra said it was thanks to everyone that she was able to get engaged to a great person. But she couldn't ignore how rude Frederica had been to Harold earlier, and it felt like Frederica might be mean to her too. Frederica got nervous and quickly walked away to greet other guests. Harold thanked Alexandra, though she didn't really understand why. Just then, Wilfred and Marion walked up to them. Harold asked what Wilfred wanted. Wilfred said he just saw them and came to say hello. Harold told him to leave if he didn't have anything important to say, but Wilfred asked him to wait and wondered if Harold was curious about why he was invited to the party. Harold said he wasn't, then walked away with Alexandra. He told his younger brother to enjoy the party without him. Wilfred and Marion just stood there, watching them leave with unhappy looks. Later, out on the balcony, Alexandra asked Harold if she could take a break to freshen up. Harold said yes. He thought that ever since Wilfred showed up, Alexandra's mood had changed. He remembered that she was someone whose feelings were hard to read. He started to wonder if she might fall for Wilfred, just like in the game. Suddenly, Cardis walked up to Harold. Harold was shocked to see Cardis of all people catching him there. Cardis asked if he was having a good time, and Harold said he was. Then Harold asked if Cardis knew that Wilfred had also been invited to the party. Cardis smiled and asked if Harold was surprised. Cardis explained that the king had told him to bring Wilfred into his group. Harold didn't expect that. Cardus went on to say that the king was worried about Wilfred's situation because he didn't have a proper place in the palace. The king couldn't help Wilfred directly because of the first queen. So the king chose Cardus to protect Wilfred and make sure no one could hurt him easily. Cardus said the party was also meant to show that Wilfred was now under his care. He then mentioned how Harold usually accepted invitations from the Marshall family right away, but this time he took longer to respond. Cardus believed Harold already knew what was going on. Before leaving, Cardus told Harold that he should start looking after their little brother from now on. Harold was left speechless. Soon after, Alexandra came back and asked if something had happened. Harold explained everything to her. Alexandra wondered what the first prince had been thinking. Harold didn't know either, but he believed that Cardus already understood the risks of bringing Wilfred into his group. For some reason, Harold could imagine Cardus actually enjoying the situation. He guessed that his oldest brother had made a deal with the king and accepted Wilfred as part of it. Alexandra then asked how Harold planned to act around Wilfred from now on. Harold said he wouldn't do anything. Whatever his brothers chose to do was not his concern. He didn't want anything from them, now or ever. Still, Harold knew deep down that his feelings were just jealousy. It made sense that Alexandra cared about the main character. He felt bad for her. She wanted to help, but there was only one thing he could do. Alexandra giggled. Harold looked confused and asked if something was going on between her and Wilfred. Since he asked, Alexandra explained that Wilfred was the person she hated the most in the world. She said that even if she heard him again and again, it still wouldn't make her feel better. She even called him an absolute scum. When Harold saw the angry look on her face, it reminded him of something from the game. That same expression was supposed to be for him, after the main character had turned against him. But now, Alexandra was looking at Wilfred that way instead. Alexandra then asked Harold if he remembered what happened 7 years ago. He didn't understand what she meant. She took his hands and told him that on that day, it was Harold who saved her. Her thoughts, her heart, her pride, and even her spirit. She asked him to listen as she shared a story from that day 7 years ago. 7 years ago, young Alexandra spent most of her dull days as a weak and quiet child, staring out the window of her room in the main house. She didn't have any friends her age, so her only way to pass the time was by reading books. Through those stories, she imagined herself exploring faraway places and falling in love with a prince, just like in the fairy tales. But one day, her father visited her with unexpected news. He said she would be going to the royal palace with him. The king had chosen Alexandra as one of the possible fiancés for the prince. Although her father tried to say no because of her health, the king insisted strongly. Alexandra asked about it in a sad voice, but deep down she was hiding a big smile. At that moment, Alexandra didn't really care about meeting the prince. What truly excited her was the fact that she would be visiting the capital for the very first time. She could hardly keep her excitement inside. When it was finally time to leave, Alexandra noticed she was wearing clothes that looked like a boy's outfit instead of a fancy dress that a princess-to-be would normally wear. Her maid said it was her father's order. It seemed strange back then, but now she believed her father had done it on purpose. He likely wanted to make sure the prince wouldn't fall for her. When Alexandra finally reached the royal palace in the capital, she was amazed by how big and grand it looked. She couldn't help but want to see more of it. While her father wasn't paying attention, she quietly slipped away and began exploring on her own. As she walked through the halls, she felt like the main character in one of the adventure stories she loved reading. She continued going deeper into the palace, hoping to find something exciting. But instead, all she found were long, empty hallways that seemed to never end. The quiet and emptiness made her nervous, and soon her fear took over. She felt frozen and couldn't move from where she stood. At that moment, a young boy named Wilfred came across her and was surprised to see someone in such a random place. Thinking she was a lost boy, he asked what she was doing there and offered to help her find the way back. Alexandra quickly said she could walk on her own. Wilfred frowned and asked for her name. She only replied with Alex. Wilfred stared at her for a few seconds, then turned around and started walking. As he walked away, he introduced himself as Harold Well de Havoltz, the third prince, although that wasn't true. Alexandra followed him, and along the way, Wilfred explained that the palace was very tricky to get around. After a while, Alexandra noticed they had been walking for over 30 minutes, and seemed to be moving farther away from where she had started. Feeling worried, she asked if they were really heading toward her father. Wilfred replied that whenever the king, his father, met with nobles, it was always in a room further ahead. He said he was pretty sure they were close. Then he smiled and grabbed Alexandra's hand, saying the adults were just in the room at the very back. When they finally reached the room, Wilfred asked Alexandra to open the door. She happily opened it, only to find a dark, empty room. Alexandra stood still, confused and unsure of what was going on as the door behind her shut. She banged on the door, begging the prince to open it. Wilfred only laughed and called her stupid. He said he was Harold, and if she needed someone to blame, it should be Harold. After that, Wilfred walked away and left her behind. Alexandra leaned against the door and cried. She regretted exploring the palace alone and no longer cared about princes. She hated them all now. Suddenly, she heard a voice near the window, wondering if anyone was inside. She called out and asked for help, but there was no answer. She dropped to the floor, unsure of what to do. She started to wonder if she was going to die in that room. Then someone knocked on the door and asked if anyone was inside. Alexandra rushed over and shouted that she was trapped. The boy on the other side panicked and told her to stay calm. He asked her to move away from the door. Alexandra waited quietly as she heard a loud metal sound, and soon the door began to shake. The door opened. Alexandra's rescuer turned out to be the real Harold. He asked if she was okay. Alexandra ran to him crying and hugged him tightly. She said she had been really scared. Harold apologized for not getting to her sooner. Once she calmed down, he told her not to cry anymore and gave her a handkerchief. To Alexandra, Harold seemed like a hero. She thanked him for coming to save her. Harold looked confused and started to wonder what had happened. Alexandra explained everything that had happened so far, including how she was locked up by someone. She also mentioned that a kid told her that if she ever wanted to hate someone, it should be Harold. Harold looked even more confused. Alexandra then asked if he knew Prince Harold. He scratched his cheek and said he wasn't sure how to explain it, but he admitted something surprising. He was actually Harold. Alexandra was shocked to find out there were two Harolds. Just then, one of the bookshelves fell toward them. Alexandra had her eyes closed and wondered why she didn't feel any pain. When she slowly opened them, she saw Harold bleeding. He laughed and asked if she was okay. Then, through the gap in the door, she noticed Wilfred laughing as he ran away. But Alexandra focused on Harold, who was trying to stop the bookshelf from falling. Her father suddenly appeared, calling out to her with worry. In a panic, Alexandra asked him to help Harold quickly. When he saw Harold's condition, he also became nervous and rushed to help. After her father helped them, Alexandra asked Harold if he was all right. Still bleeding, Harold said he was fine and insisted he had to keep going. Alexandra pointed out that he was still hurt and tried to assist him, but her father stopped her and told her to let the prince go. When she asked why, her father just shook his head without answering. And just like that, Harold walked out of the room. Alexandra stood still holding the handkerchief Harold had left behind. After that, Alexandra found out the truth about Harold's real position in the royal palace and why her father had stopped her from going after him before. She learned that Harold didn't have the crest of Dehavolts, a special power passed down only through royal blood. Because of that, no one accepted him. No one had ever tried to understand the real Harold, but Alexandra saw him differently. To her, Harold was strong, kind, and full of talent. She realized he was a truly amazing person. She felt angry and hurt that everyone had judged him unfairly. She couldn't forgive them for how they treated him. That anger became her reason to grow stronger so she could stand by his side. After all, Harold had saved her that day. Harold began to cry. Alexandra knew he was never the incompetent villainous prince people called him. Not even once. She said he had saved her life, and to her he was someone who could never be replaced. She held his hand tightly and told him that becoming his fiancée was what made her truly happy. Harold kept crying and leaned on Alexandra, crying even louder. He had always known what it meant to be called that cruel name, yet still carried the weight of it. Alexandra was the only person who had ever truly seen him for who he really was. After that, Harold wiped his tears and said he only cried because he felt nostalgic. But the truth was, it wasn't just that. Alexandra simply laughed at how he acted, and Harold turned red from embarrassment. Then, without warning, Alexandra became serious, which surprised Harold even more since he had just been crying. She explained that Wilfred had tried to use her to embarrass Harold. She clearly called Wilfred someone who deserved to be hated. Harold started wondering why his brother would do something like that to Alexandra. Alexandra said it was obvious that Wilfred only did it because he wanted to hurt Harold in some way. Harold said he didn't even talk to his brother that much. Still, he thought it was better to stay away from Wilfred. Alexandra agreed and said Wilfred didn't deserve any of Harold's time or attention. But if Harold ever decided to take revenge on his brother one day, Alexandra said she wanted to be the one to do it. Harold just gave a small laugh and told her he would think about it. He held her hand and thanked her. Alexandra blushed and held his hand tighter as she pulled him along. Soon they returned to the ball. Harold felt like he had already done what he needed to do by showing up and just wanted to go home. But Alexandra said it was still too early to leave. Harold remembered that Alexandra didn't really want to attend the ball either, so he felt like something else might be going on. Then, feeling a little nervous, he asked her if she wanted to stop by the palace afterward. He thought Monica and CAs would be happy to hear about their day, and he also wanted to spend a bit more time together with her. Alexandra seemed surprised but quickly agreed and said they should head home right away. Harold got nervous again and said maybe they should inform the event organizers first, but Alexandra said they didn't have time for that. Right then, Harold saw his two older brothers talking to each other. This confused him. It was the first time he had seen them have a conversation. Even if they were only talking because the king asked them to, they actually seemed to be enjoying it. When Harold looked too serious, Alexandra reached out and lightly pinched his forehead. She reminded him that they were finally free, yet he still wore such a gloomy expression. Harold asked if his face really looked that bad. Alexandra said it did. He looked like he was angrily staring at his brothers. Harold apologized. She gently held his hand and asked if he was acting like that because of the story she had told him earlier. Harold said that wasn't the reason, but deep inside, that was exactly why. Alexandra couldn't help but smile and blush a little. She pulled him along and suggested that they head home. Just as they were about to leave, someone called out to Alexandra and asked if she was going home already. The voice came from a handsome man. Harold was surprised that someone had the nerve to approach someone as cute as Alexandra. To his shock, Alexandra called the man her older brother. Harold was caught off guard and quickly tried to greet him but accidentally bit his tongue in the process. The man introduced himself as Cedric, Alexandra's big brother. He and Harold shook hands, but Cedric didn't hide his bad attitude. He gave Harold a sharp glare and gripped his hand too tightly, making Harold cry out in pain. Alexandra then asked her brother what he was doing at the ball. Cedric explained that he got an invitation from Cardis. At first he didn't plan to go, but when he found out his beloved sister would be attending with Harold, he changed his mind. Watching all of this reminded Harold of how Cedric acted in the game version of Alexandra's story route. Cedric always tried to get between them. He was basically the overprotective and annoying big brother who made everything more difficult. Alexandra only heard what she wanted and quickly pulled Harold away. Cedric called out, asking her to wait. With tears in his eyes, he said it had been a long time since they last saw each other and begged her not to leave so suddenly. Alexandra said she had no reason to talk to him. Cedric tried to calm his sister down and guessed she came because she needed a favor. He reminded her that he was still the next leader of the Chevalier family. Alexandra said her only wish was for her brother to disappear from her sight right away. Cedric told her that wasn't the kind of favor he meant. He explained that since the third prince, Harold, was engaged to Alexandra, the oldest daughter of the Chevalier family, her role had greatly changed the balance of power in the fight for the throne. Harold understood what Cedric was trying to say. If he wanted to keep his position at the palace, he needed the Chevalier family's support. That meant he had to be on good terms with the next family head. Harold could already tell that Cedric's support might become important, but he wondered why Cedric was only bringing this up now. Then he realized Cedric had been approached. Cedric confirmed it. Cardis had smiled and told him to support Harold from now on since they would soon be family. Still, Cedric had no plans to join the fight for the throne. But if his dear younger sister asked for it, he figured he could help out. Alexandra wanted to say they were handling things on their own, but she was curious to hear what her fiancé thought about it. Harold believed that to survive in the world of Enhaza, he needed the support of the Chevalier family. That meant having Cedric on his side would be the best option. Everyone watched as Harold bowed his head and politely asked for Cedric's support. By doing just that, he could gain the backing of the Chevalier family. If it meant avoiding a bad ending with Alexandra, Harold didn't care about feeling ashamed. The pride he once held onto had already faded away. To everyone's surprise, Cedric agreed and promised to support Harold. However, he had one condition. He first apologized for what he was about to say. Then he pointed out that Harold was currently seen by the public as the incompetent villainous prince, which gave him a very bad reputation. Cedric admitted that Harold was facing the results of his own actions. Alexandra gave her brother a sharp look and asked if he was insulting Harold. Cedric, clearly shaken, quickly shouted that he didn't mean it that way. He raised his voice so much that it shocked Harold and everyone around them. Cedric explained that he wanted Harold to prove himself because Cedric needed to know the truth. He wanted to see if Harold was really someone he could trust with his dear little sister. Harold remembered that this scene also happened in the game. It was part of a duel event with Cedric. If the player won the fight, Cedric would accept the player's relationship with his sister. But Cedric was treated like a strong event boss, with stats close to the heroine's. Harold began to wonder if his current self had what it took to defeat Cedric. At that moment, Alexandra said there was no need to deal with her brother. She believed she could handle the situation on her own if Harold truly wanted her family's support. Cedric suddenly felt like his position as the future head of the family was being challenged. Even so, Harold stepped forward and agreed to Cedric's offer. He asked if Cedric simply wanted to find out whether he was good enough for Alexandra. Alexandra started to worry. Cedric smiled and told Harold to prove himself in a duel. He also knew Harold would need time to get ready, so he suggested having the duel in a month at the Chevalier family's townhouse. Harold said he didn't mind. Alexandra tried to stop them, but Cedric bowed his head and said he looked forward to their duel a month later. As her brother walked away, Alexandra firmly told her fiancé that beating her brother with his current strength was almost impossible. Harold admitted he felt the same way. Alexandra then angrily asked why he accepted the challenge when he could have simply ignored her brother's foolishness. Harold said he couldn't do that. He thought there was no way he could back down now. If he wanted to take the main character's place, marry Alexandra, and avoid a bad ending, Then he had to move forward. He wanted to see what would happen if they faced the worst together. Alexandra softly called him an idiot and held on to him. Harold said he already knew. Soon after, Harold was lying on the ground completely beaten up while CAs stood nearby making fun of him. Alexandra looked down at him and asked Monica what she thought. Monica wasn't sure what Alexandra meant by that. Alexandra then said that Harold didn't have any more room to grow in terms of physical strength. Monica agreed without hesitation. Harold couldn't believe how heartless the girls seemed at that moment. But deep down he knew this only meant one thing. His physical ability stats had probably reached their limit. Alexandra then said it was time to focus on the technical side of his training, and she believed it was the perfect time to make that shift. As Harold glanced at CAs nearby, he realized something important. He was finally ready to move forward with the next part of his plan. He stood up and told the girls he had some ideas for his future training, but he admitted it was more like a request than a suggestion. Alexandra was curious and asked what he meant. Harold then explained that in their future matches, he wanted to use the jet black shield, Kasperig. Since he couldn't use any special skills, using the shield was the only thing he could rely on. He then turned to CAs and asked if they could start training together from now on. CAs agreed without hesitation and quickly jumped onto Harold's shoulder. He reminded Harold that they were partners after all. Alexandra said it was a smart idea to get used to using the shield. She smiled and told Harold not to worry. She would make sure he got stronger no matter what. After the training ended, Harold said goodbye to Alexandra, but she told him she would still visit the next day no matter what. She promised she would come see him. After she left, Harold told Monica and CAs it was time to go back to their room. But just as they started walking, someone suddenly blocked their path. Harold stopped in his tracks. It was Wilfred standing there with his personal maid. Wilfred asked if his sister-in-law had finally gone. Harold replied that it wasn't his business. Then Harold said that he was now officially recognized as their brother Cardus's right-hand man. Both he and his maid gave a smug smile. Harold sighed and said it was good for him, but honestly he didn't really care. Wilfred gave him a sharp look. He had heard that Harold had been going around telling people he was Cardus's right-hand man. To him, it sounded like Harold was just bragging. Wilfred pointed out that their brother never actually said that Harold was his right hand. Harold seemed confused and asked if Cardus had lost his mind because he never said or did anything like that. Wilfred then said that from now on, he would be the one to unite the different groups and support Cardus the way he deserved. Harold suddenly admitted that he was leaving Cardus's faction. That surprised Wilfred. He even wondered if Harold was allowed to make that kind of decision. Harold said he would only take those words seriously if they came from Cardus himself. He also questioned what gave Wilfred the right to speak to him that way. Still, Harold found the whole situation strange. In the game's original story, Wilfred was supposed to be the hero. But now, with how he had treated Alexandra in the past, it felt like Wilfred was slowly turning into someone like the old version of Harold. Wilfred said he had the right to speak because he was now Cardus's right-hand man. He warned that if Harold, a prince, kept acting like that, it would give others the wrong idea. He told him to stop dragging people down, but Harold could see what was really going on. Wilfred was just trying to prove something and needed someone to blame. Harold reminded him that he was already known as the incompetent villainous prince, so there was no point in worrying about his image now. Then he ended the talk and walked away, leaving Wilfred and his maid speechless. Wilfred clenched his teeth in frustration. Monica, the maid, asked if she should kill Wilfred, but Harold told her to hold back for now. From that day forward, Harold started training together with CAs. Along with Alexandra, Monica also joined the training on the attack side. As expected, Harold struggled a lot. Still, he didn't give up and kept raising his shield to block Monica's quick and strong strikes. Suddenly, Alexandra showed up with a fierce look in her eyes. In an instant, she knocked Harold hard against the wall. CAs called out to him, crying in worry. Alexandra asked if Harold was finished. Even though he was bleeding, Harold smiled and said he wasn't done yet. That was exactly what Alexandra wanted from her fiancé. She laughed softly and promised to make sure he would someday defeat her brother. Her smile gave Harold chills. Not long after, Harold and the group traveled to the Chevalier family's land. CAs said everything was getting exciting. Harold agreed with a smile, but his shaking legs showed he was nervous. Later, he held Alexandra's hand and said that everything he had gone through during the past month led to this moment. He promised he wouldn't lose, no matter what happened. Alexandra gave a small smile and held his hand more tightly. In his mind, Harold just wanted to run. After all, he was the weakest character in the game, and now he had to face Cedric, who was said to be as strong as the game's main heroines. Harold knew he had almost no chance. Still, he had to fight. Later at the training grounds, Cedric said it was time to begin. As he had mentioned earlier, he wanted to test how strong Harold's determination truly was. He suggested they have a duel using real swords to see how serious Harold was. When Harold looked closely, he recognized Cedric's weapon. It was the Crimson Hundred Blossom sword, also called Kotetu. This sword gave a strong attack boost, and its special move, Crimson Rampage, could hit 5 times in one fast burst. But this wasn't just a friendly match, Cedric actually wanted to win. If Harold wasn't careful, he could get seriously hurt or even worse. Even with the danger, Harold accepted the challenge. He agreed to fight Cedric and asked CAs to support him. CAs said he would since they were partners. Harold took his fighting stance and CAs changed into a jet black shield. Cedric looked a little worried and asked if Harold really planned to fight using only a shield. Harold said yes. Cedric reminded him that this was his choice and warned him that he wouldn't hold back. Harold said he was ready. With CAs by his side, he believed he could win. He had already promised himself that he would beat Cedric and prove he was good enough to be engaged to Alexandra. When Monica gave the signal, Cedric quickly rushed forward to strike. Harold was surprised by his speed and figured that Cedric had used physical enhancement. Still, Harold stayed calm and blocked the strong attack with his shield. Cedric stepped back, surprised. Harold was also shocked. He hadn't expected to stop the attack so well. It wasn't just because CAs helped him, it was also because he had trained with Alexandra, whose speed and strength were even greater. Just when Harold started to believe he might win, Cedric activated his sword's skill. 4 more glowing blades appeared around his red sword. He launched the Crimson Rampage at Harold. The fast and powerful strikes came one after another as Harold raised his shield to block them. He felt the pressure building with every hit. Cedric laughed and teased him, asking if he couldn't keep up. No matter how one looked at it, Harold was being pushed back by the wild and furious Cedric. He held on as long as he could and fought back by swinging his shield with force. He asked if this was everything Cedric had. Cedric clicked his tongue, clearly frustrated. He hadn't expected Harold to be this skilled. At that moment, CAs suggested ending the fight using the technique called Snatch. But Harold refused. Snatch was a move that allowed a long-range instant kill while staying on defense. It felt too unfair. Harold didn't want to win that way. He had trained hard to beat Cedric without relying on Snatch. He wanted a true victory, and he was doing it all for Alexandra. Cedric then gathered fire on his sword and sent a fiery slash toward Harold. The thick flames flew fast, but Harold managed to block them with his shield. He quickly apologized to CAs. The Black Cat already knew there was no stopping him. It was simply part of the job to follow his partner's lead. Harold laughed and called CAs the best partner anyone could ask for. He truly meant it. Cedric launched another attack, but Harold was ready. He had made up his mind to block it, no matter what. The two boys clashed once more, and in that moment, Cedric's crimson sword flew out of his hand. Cedric was surprised, and Harold took the chance to slam his shield into him. The shield bash knocked Cedric down to the ground. Harold took a deep breath and looked at him, thinking he had won the match. After the duel, Cedric kept saying that his real talent wasn't in fighting, but in domestic affairs. He told Harold not to think that the duel showed everything he could do. Alexandra said her brother was being childish and told him to accept her fiancé's strength. In the end, Cedric admitted he had lost. Just like Harold expected, Cedric still cared a lot about his sister, even though he acted like a sore loser. He was still the same Cedric Harold remembered from the game. At that moment, Cedric seriously reminded Harold that what he was about to say wasn't because he was a sore loser. He pointed out that Harold's final attack had been too weak. He was worried that such an attack wouldn't work well in a real battle. Cedric then suggested that Harold should think about using a weapon like a sword. Harold said that wouldn't be needed. Cedric then asked if Harold only used a shield because he didn't take him seriously. Harold replied that wasn't the reason. He admitted that he couldn't use a sword, a bow, or even magic, but to him that was okay. He had Alexandra as his sword, Monica as his bow, and CAs as his magic. He didn't need anything else. All he needed was a shield to protect them himself. That's right, his role was to protect them. That was the reason he chose to carry a shield. Cedric became more serious and called out to Harold. He gave him a deep bow and asked if he could trust him to take care of his sister. Harold agreed and said he looked forward to their future. Cedric then asked him again to look after Alexandra from now on. A few days after the duel, Cedric was still feeling tense at the academy. He became more worried when he learned that Alexandra had agreed on her own to get engaged to the useless and disliked prince. Even so, the contract with the royal family could not be changed. Besides, only someone from the royal family was seen as a proper match for his sister. So in the end, proposing the engagement wasn't the real problem. Of all people, it had to be Harold. Every noble in the country knew about Harold's reputation as the useless prince. He didn't seem to have any skills or talent, just like his nickname said. But now Cedric knew that wasn't true. He remembered the duel, where Harold had clearly shown courage and strength as his sister's future husband. It was a fact that Cedric had lost that day. He had no choice but to accept it and support the engagement between them. Still, deep inside, he couldn't truly accept it. Even so, from that moment on, he decided he would be the one to judge Harold. If he ever found even a small reason to believe Harold wasn't good enough for his sister, he would use the full strength of House Chevalier to break them apart. At the same time, Alexandra became more active in showing care toward Harold. She even fed him with her own hands. She believed that showing affection was important for couples who were planning to get married. Monica didn't argue with that, but she pointed out that Harold looked a little overwhelmed. Instead of her lady, Monica offered to help with Harold's meal. Alexandra tried to stop her, but Harold had already decided he wanted to eat on his own. Just then, a maid arrived and said that Cardis was looking for him. Harold had already guessed this was about him leaving the faction. He expected to get scolded for doing something foolish. He told the maid he would go see his brother right away. Alexandra quickly said she wanted to go with him as his fiancée. She also believed that the Crown Prince's real reason had something to do with House Chevalier, her family. Harold realized she wanted to come along so his brother wouldn't be too harsh with him. His heart skipped a beat because of how kind she was. Alexandra asked if something was wrong, but Harold said it was nothing. Monica then joked that he should be more honest about his feelings. The couple went to meet the Crown Prince. Cardis gave Harold a sharp look and angrily asked if he even knew why he had been called. He questioned what Harold thought he could achieve by leaving his group, especially since he had never done much. Cardis didn't believe Harold would seriously try to compete for the throne at such a late stage. Harold asked him in return what someone like him could even do in Cardis's group. Cardis reminded him that they shared the same mother, and said he couldn't believe Harold would betray him like this. Harold then asked another question. Even if it was their father's order, why did Cardis let Wilfred join his side? Harold pointed out that Wilfred was the prince their mother hated the most. He doubted she even knew about this decision. Cardis calmly said he would tell the queen later, but Harold had already made up his mind. He no longer wanted to support Cardis. More clearly, he didn't want to help a brother who would accept Wilfred even once. Cardis cursed at him, but Harold turned to Alexandra and apologized for making her see their family fight. He asked her to leave with him. Cardis told him to stop and warned him not to ignore him. Still, Harold and Alexandra left the room. Just when Harold thought the hard part was over, a boy appeared and said he had been waiting for him. Harold recognized the boy as Raphael. The boy gave him a strange and suspicious smile. That is all up to Chapter 9. Please view the comment below about the next chapter.